Hi, Dave Scotland for cgswat.com, and welcome to another tutorial. Today we're going to have a look at rigging with bones in 3D. Now previously on the site we did a tutorial called rigging without bones, tutorial number 22, and it's in the 3D tutorial section. Strongly suggest that you have a look at this tutorial, rigging without bones, before you do this particular tutorial, because it takes a good look at the pivot point relationship in the rigging process, and it will give you a greater understanding of what we're about to do with the built-in 3D Studio Max bones. So definitely have a look at that tutorial before you take a look at this one. So we're going to be using the same geometry. We're going to be using the lamp, and the techniques that we discussed during this tutorial are applicable to I've chosen this lamp because it's very similar to a limb structure. You could imagine that this lamp is in fact an arm, where you have the base section down here could be the upper arm, and the lower arm or forearm could be this top section here, and then the wrist and hand could be the very top of the lamp. Also for a leg. So we've tried to keep it fairly simplistic without getting into character stuff. Later on we're definitely going to do a full character rig in one of our webinar masterclasses coming up. So keep an eye out for that, but let's get started. Basically we've got our lamp here, and we're just going to switch to a left view. I'm going to maximize that, and you'll see that if I rotate these, and I'll just switch my rotation method to local. If I rotate the various pieces, the pivot point is actually in the center of the various geometry. It's basically utilizing the center of the object as its pivot point, and so any rotation is not going to actually work here. Now if you took a look at the rigging without bones, basically that was the method of going into the hierarchy here, and the hierarchy tab, and clicking on the effect pivot only, and moving that pivot point down to the relative pivot point that you require for movement of the bone. So we would basically move that pivot point down to here, and then come out of that mode, and then we would be able to rotate that geometry in its correct place. But we're just going to undo that. Rigging with bones, basically what we're doing is we're setting up a bone structure that is going to allow the geometry to move in the way that we want it to move. And the way we want this lamp to move is we want this base piece to move around this ball joint down the bottom here, and then we also want this top piece to move around this rivet here, and then the very top head of the lamp is it needs to rotate around this top ball joint here. So using bones, what we can do is set up a bone structure to allow us to do that without actually selecting any of the geometry, and that's where bones are quite powerful, because it gives you the ability to animate the object without selecting any of the mesh itself. And we'll go ahead and do that now. So the tools that we're going to use are the bone tools. Now there are two choices for you to create bone objects. They're the same or the same technique, just using slightly different procedures. Now the two locations in our create tab here, if we slide across and reveal the systems, you'll see that there's a bones button there, and if we click on that and we click and drag, click and drag, click and drag, we've just created these 3 bones. Now they don't look like very much, and that's because of the settings that have been inherited probably from a previous session of 3D Max that I was in, and I used bones. It sort of inherited those last bone settings for size and things like that. Now we're just going to have a very quick look at what those sizes mean. I'm just going to delete these bones and delete this one as well. We're going to click on the bone setting here, and this time I'm going to change the width to, let's say, 5 by 5. I'm going to set the side fins to 5 in size, and the back fin I'm going to tick and set it to, say, 2.5, about half of the side fin. Now when I click on the bone object here and create a bone, you can now see the representation of the bones a lot better. You can see that we've got these side fins out the side, and we've also got a back fin which is just underneath here. And I'll just switch back to a front view, a left view. And so there's our bones there. Now, just very quickly, I'll show you, you'll notice that it created a little tiny bone at the end when I right-clicked at the end of that creation process, and it created a bone that's termed, it's basically known as a terminator bone, which is quite handy when you're using inverse kinematics, which we're going to get to a little bit later on. But let's have a look at the structure that's actually been created here. We've got our base bone, which is the first bone that was created, and you'll notice the name of it is bone 01. Now, if I rotate that bone, all of the bones rotate with that bone. If I rotate the second bone, only the bones above that structure rotate with it, and the same for the third bone, and obviously the last bone doesn't have anything connected to it. So that's basically what the way a bone structure works, is that it through the creation process, it parents all of the bones throughout the structure to the previous bone based on the rotation point of the bone, which is the first click point that we created the bone with. And then the second click point is the rotation point for the second bone, and the third click point, and so on. And that's basically the bone structure. So let's delete those. And the other method of creating bones is using bone tools. So if we come into our animation pull-down menu, there's a selection here called bone tools, and by clicking on that, it brings up this bone tools menu. So I'm just going to go to a wireframe mode. I'm going to get rid of my grid so that we can see what we're doing a little bit better here. Now you've got bone edit mode, which I'll explain in a moment, but we have bone create bones in the bone tools section here, and we're going to click on that, and we're going to click roughly down here where the lamp pivot point should be on this ball joint at the bottom. We're going to click there. We're going to drag up to that pivot point for the second piece, or the top part of the arm. And we're clicking again up here, like we're dragging. We're not holding the mouse button down. It's going to follow wherever I put the mouse without me holding it down. And then I'm just going to click on this top ball joint here. And then I'm just going to put it's really a cosmetic bone, and that'll become apparent in a moment when we get to it. But I'm just going to click up here, and then I'm going to right click to stop the bone creation process. And by right clicking, it stops creating bones, and it creates that little terminator bone at the top. And with it selected, you'll notice that that terminator bone is still selected. It's called bone 04. We're going to delete it. So just hit delete, and that'll get rid of that terminator bone. We don't need it at this point, and most of the time you won't need it, but it's quite handy that it automatically sort of puts it in there. Now what I'm going to do is just click on my selection subsets here, and I'm just going to select bone, and that way I can drag a marquee around, and it's only going to select the bone and not the geometry. We're going to come in a little bit closer here. In fact, what we'll do is drag around the entire lamp, and it's going to select all 3 bones. I'm just going to drag around a bit more, just so that you can see what we're doing here, and you'll see that we have these little side fins, and we have our back fin. And with those selected, I can now scroll down a little bit and play with the fin adjustments here. And if I wind the back fin size up you'll see that it's the, and I'll just go to a shaded mode so that you can see what's happening there. As I wind those numbers, it's affecting that back fin. And if I come around a little bit and wind the numbers for the side fin, it's affecting those side fins there, which are just visual representations. They're designed to basically help you understand which way the bone is facing, which is back, front, and sides. Now, if I just go to a left view here, unfortunately, the back fin, which is this one here, is really facing the wrong direction. I want the back fin to be up the back of the geometry. So what we're going to do is we're going to, with all those bones selected, we're going to delete, and we're just going to hit V to bring up our view menu, and instead of going from a right view, we're going to do the bone creation mode from a left view. Or sorry, a right view rather than a left view. So the lamp should be facing this way. And watch what happens now when I create bones. I'm just going to go to a wireframe, slide up and create bones. I'm just going to click in that ball joint area, click in the pivot point there, and click in that ball joint, and then up to the top and right click, and then delete that terminator bone at the top. Now if I select, we'll make sure we come out of bone creation mode there, and I select all of the bones and wind that back fin up. The back fin is now on the back of the bones and not on this front area here, which is what I wanted. And what we're going to do is we're just going to set the bone size to let's say 8 for the back fins, and then the side fins we're going to set that to let's say 15. And now if we just bring that around, we've got our side fins very visible there, and we know at a glance, if we go to a shaded mode, we know at a glance that this little short fin is the back and the longer fins are the side. And that just means that we can really see which way the bone is selected. So what we can do now is really get those bones to be sitting right where they need to be relative to the pivot point for the respective joints. So we'll work on this base one first, and what we're going to do is slide up and we'll click on bone edit mode. Now watch what happens here when I click on bone edit mode and I select this first bone here. I'm just going to go to a wireframe. I can now move that bone's pivot point, and I can place it right where I want it. Now if I didn't have bone edit mode selected and I tried that same operation, watch what happens. The whole structure moves with it, and that's not what we want. What we want to do is just really define those pivot points for the bone, and that's what bone edit mode is all about. So we'll click on bone edit mode. We're going to come right in here, and we're going to find that center point, which is right there. It's based on the blue base area of the lamp. We're just going to put it right on that point. Then we're going to click on our second bone, and once again we can move that pivot point wherever we want. But if we weren't in bone edit mode, this is what would happen when we move it around. So we'll go into bone edit mode, and we're going to get right in the center of that piece of geometry that represents that that rivet that we're going to pivot around on. And that's about it there. Now we're going to select the third bone, which is up in the head here, and we're just going to move it right to the center of that ball bearing area. Right about there. You can get it as close as you want. And that's it there. And that's our bone edit mode adjustment done. And now if we just go into rotation, we can see that we can rotate the top bone. We can grab the second bone there, second bone down, rotate it, and grab our base bone, rotate it as well. And we're getting we're starting to get our bone rig sorted out here. Now, always good idea to, let's go to a front view and just make sure that that bone is right in the center. It should be, because if I switch on the grid, I centered up the lamp right on that center line. So that's going to mean that when we created our bones, it was right down that center line. But always make sure that when you're doing any sort of fine tuning of bones, that you line up with the pivot point on all of the axes. And it looks like they are all fine. I'll just switch off that grid again so we can see what we're doing. And the next thing we need to do is, I think what we need to do is have the base of the lamp, which I can't select at the moment because I'm in bone selection mode up in here. But the base of the lamp is basically the master of the rig. It's the piece of geometry that's grounded on the ground or on any surface, and the rest of the rig stretches up from that grounding point. But we're trying to create a rig where we don't select geometry. So that way we can lock our geometry later on from selection and only select the rig components. So what we're going to do is create a dummy that controls the base of the lamp, or the base of the rig, which is like our master anchor dummy. So in the creation tab here, we're just going to click on our dummy helpers. I'm going to click on the dummy, and I might just go to a top view, wireframe, and I'm just going to draw out a dummy here in the top view and move it over and line it up. I can use my right click to center it and then just move it back. We'll go to a left view, and that's about it there. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to slide it up until the base of the dummy lines up with the base of the lamp. So we're looking for that white line to line up with the base of the lamp there. And then we're going to move the pivot point of the dummy. So we're going into our hierarchy tab, effect pivot only. And what we're going to do is click on the align tool here while we're in effect pivot only mode. I'm just going to click on the align tool and click on the bone 01. And what you'll see there is the pivot point will pop exactly in 3D space to where that bone 01's pivot point is. And we'll just go OK to that and come out of effect pivot only mode. Now you'll see that dummy, that base dummy that we have there now, if I rotate it, it rotates around that pivot point, which is exactly what we want. So what we're going to do is grab our bone 01. We're going to use our linking tools. We can get rid of our bone tools for now. And we're going to link bone 01 to that dummy. We need to come out of bone. We'll go all for selection mode. Instead of just bones, we're going to be able to select all. And we're going to link bone 01 to the dummy. And now, if I rotate, the whole rig rotates with that master dummy. So that's all we need to do for now. And as far as the rig is concerned, what we can do now is start linking our geometry to the rig. Now we know the base is represented by this master helper here, which we'll rename master base. Let's call it controller. Master base control. And we're going to grab the base geometry, lamp base, and we're going to link it to that dummy. And now you'll see if I rotate the dummy, the lamp base rotates with it, which is exactly what we want. And we can grab our first piece of geometry on the chain, which is the actually we need the ball joint down here, which is a separate piece of geometry to the arm. And what we're going to do with that is link it to the bone, to to bone 1. Bone 1. We're going to grab the arm, which is lamp lower arm, and we're going to link it to the bone. We're going to grab the upper arm, lamp upper arm, and link it to the second bone. Then we're going to grab the top lamp head or lamp shade and link it to this smaller bone. And then we might as well grab the globe and link that to that bone as well. So now what happens when we click on the top bone, we get rotation for the head, just using the bone. We get rotation for the head and the upper arm by using that bone there. And the base bone, we can move that around and get rotation for the whole upper structure. And then we can grab our dummy, we can move that up and down, left and right, and we can also rotate, and that's working exactly the way we need to work it. Now, what we've got there is a very simple rig that can be used for what's called forward kinematics, where if I want this lamp to be pointing over here and facing forward, what I would need to do is grab this first bone, rotate it out, grab the second bone, rotate it back up, and grab the top bone and sort of straighten it up. And then I could keyframe that as one of the positions for an animation. And then I could bring it back and keyframe that as, you know, a few frames on as another position in the animation. So that's a forward kinematic or FK way of animating. But what I'll do is I'll show you a very powerful tool that is that can be used with these bones. If I select the Bono 1 and then just come up into Animation, IK Solvers, High Solver, you'll notice that I'm not clicking on anything, but by selecting it, it's got a dotted line leading to my mouse, and it's waiting for me to select the end of the IK solving chain. And in this instance, what we want to do is select this top bone, Bono 3, and click it. Now, by doing that, it's created an IK or inverse kinematics structure based on those two bone selections that I had. I started with Bono 1 and I finished with Bono 3. And if I come in here a little closer and just what I might need to do is just select that. I'm just going to go into the IK parameters here. So I'm in the motion tab, and basically what I'm trying to do is make the icon that I've selected there a little bit larger so that you can see it. Goal display, there it is there. So we just want to make the goal display a little bit larger so that we can see what we're doing, and you can see in the viewport that there's a cross that's becoming larger as we wind that number up. And that's it there. So that's in the motion tab with that selected, and it's called IK Chain 1. Now, you'll see it there, it's a blue cross. If I select that, I can now move my lamp in a inverse kinematics method, which is by taking the end point, and if this was an arm, this would be the hand. I could select the hand and point it out here, which is the same pose that we created before with forward kinematics by rotating this bone, then rotating this bone, then straightening up this bone here. And so basically we have this structure built into the rig, and it's taking into consideration all the pivot points and the linking, and all I'm doing is moving one object, which is this IK helper, this IK chain helper. So we'll just undo that. we're going to take that a little bit further now by implementing. You'll notice that as I sweep out here, we're getting some sort of undesirable rotation on the head. If I bring it back here, it's sort of tilting back. If I bring it here, it's tilting forward. And we want to get rid of that problem. So I'm just going to undo that, bring it back to our starting position. What I'm going to do, you'll notice that if I rotate that helper, it doesn't do anything. And so we need to implement a system where we can control that head while still being able to use that IK methodology. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to grab this top bone, and we're just going to straighten it back up so that it's looking, so that the head, the lampshade, is looking straight ahead. And then we're going to create another dummy. Now we're just going to go to the top view. Just going to draw out a dummy here, probably about that big will do. We'll go to a front view, a left view, and we're going to drag it up, basically to encapsulate this head, the lampshade. We'll go to the top view. We'll make sure we can use our right click to make sure that it's right on that center line. If I unhide the grid, you can see that it's right on that center line. We'll just go to a left view again, move it back up, because I right clicked on all three axes and that set it to world 0. And we're just going to line it up here. Now we're going to use the same technique with the hierarchy tab. Just go into a hierarchy, click on the pivot, effect pivot only, and align, use the align tool back to the IK helper here, this blue cross. So we'll click on that, and it's going to pop the pivot point back to there, and we'll go OK. Now you'll see, if we come out of effect pivot only mode, that dummy is going to rotate around that point, and that's exactly what we want. So let's link our helper. So we'll take our IK helper and we're going to link it to the dummy, so that now when we move the dummy, it's going to move the same as if we were moving just the IK helper. But what we're going to do is grab this bone. We're going to go into the motion tab, and we're just going to click down the FK subcontrol here in the motion tab, in the assign controller. Now we've got to make sure that you've got the bone selected there, bone 03. And what we're going to do is highlight rotation in the list. At the moment it's set for Euler XYZ. And then we're just going to click on this assign controller button, which brings up our choices. And we're going to use the orientation constraint. Click OK. And that gives us this little box down here to add an orientation target. So we're going to click on that, and then we're going to click on the dummy. And it'll pop around to a weird position there, and we can fix that by keep initial offset. Just click that and it'll pop back to where it should, and then click the add orientation target again to get out of that selection mode. Now you'll see that we can take our dummy, we can move it around, and we're getting that movement in the arm structure of the lamp, and we also have the ability to rotate the dummy and give the head the control that we wanted. Another good thing to understand is I can now take my base dummy and move it up and down, and look at the animation that I get there. It's independent of that head, that lampshade head. And with those two dummies, I can achieve some incredible animation. I can have this lamp bouncing a la the Pixar logo lamp, bouncing across the stage. I've got independent animation. I'll just pop that back to that center point there. I've got independent animation for the head and for the lamp, the base, and I can rotate the base, and it will rotate around. And I'll just come to a sort of a perspective view and show you what's happening there. I can rotate that base around, and it's going to wiggle around. They're going to rotate the head around like so. I can move it up and down. I can bring my my lamp base around like so. So basically what we've created there is a very, very simple bone structured rig. Just go to a left view again here. And you can see that we have our bones represented by those fins so that we can see where our bones are actually looking. What I could actually do is grab another dummy and just go to a top view and make this one quite large. Go to a front view, maybe a left view, sorry, and then just raise it up to level out the bottom so that the bottom of the dummy is equal to the bottom there. And we could call this, what did we call our other one? Master Base Controller. We'll call this one Master Lamp Control. And what we can do is link the base to that one and the dummy at the top to that one as well. We might just rename our top dummy. We'll call it Lampshade Control. And we'll go OK to that. Now, we've linked those two. What we've now got is a master controller that literally moves the entire rig. So we've got that master lamp control. We can move left, right. We can rotate it up and down. Ideal for getting the lamp to stick to a surface that's perhaps moving. But the whole time we have our ability to change to animate the head. It still stays the same. We can animate the head around, and we can animate the base around and move the base and move the head. So that's a very, very simple rig. It's a bone structured rig. Later on we're going to do a masterclass, a webinar masterclass where we're going to rig an entire character, and that's we're going to rig the center of gravity up into the spine, and then have arms, head controllers. We'll probably even do face controllers. We'll do leg. We'll do foot roll for a good walk cycle. Rigging a foot roll controller system is not an easy thing to do. It's quite advanced, but we're definitely going to go through that because it's very hard to do. A good example is, say this was a foot. The base of the lamp was a foot. When you walk, basically you plant your foot at the heel, which is, say, like that, and then you go through this curved or sort of curled animation, and then you lift off at the toes. So basically the only way to get that to work is to have an alternating pivot point on the foot, where you've got a pivot point at the base of the foot near the heel, and you've also got a pivot point at the toes. And you need to be able to change between the heel rotation and the toe rotation in order to do a proper walk cycle. So rigging using custom rigs, which is what this is that we've done here today. It's a custom bone rig. Setting up a foot roll rig is not an easy thing to do, but we're definitely going to look at that in a webinar masterclass. So keep an eye out for that. So basically what you've gone through here today is an alternative to rigging with bones, as opposed to, as I mentioned, the rigging without bones tutorial that specifically just relies on pivot points and changing the pivot points of geometry. So what we can do, if I select geometry as my selection mode here and grab all of the geometry, I can right click object properties and freeze the geometry. I'll just untick show frozen in grey and go OK to that. Now it's impossible, if I go all, it's impossible for me to now select geometry. The only things I can select are my controllers. And I can even select my bones. I can select the two bones there and the top bone, right click object properties and freeze the bones as well. so that now the only thing I can select in this scene are my controllers. I've got my lampshade controller at the top, I've got my bass controller here, and I've got my master controls here. And I can even freeze this IK helper, the IK Chain 01, because we don't need to be able to select that either. We only need to select our dummies that we've set up for our rig. And that's a good rig. A good rig is when you only select what you need to get the thing to animate. And by utilizing this scenario, it's a very basic look at how to do exactly that, to only have controllers to give you all of the animation that you require, which is, at the end of the day, exactly what you're looking for. Okay, so that's rigging with bones, a very simple look, as I said, and we will go into a lot more detail later on in future tutorials and, as I said, the masterclass webinar. So that's it. Until next time, bye for now.